Aliens Explored is a podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a sceptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
In 1979, an underground construction expert claimed to have had a firefight with aliens at Dulce, New Mexico. He then went on to give lectures and speeches about it all over the country before dying under mysterious circumstances in 1996. Join myself and Neil here on Aliens Explored as we discuss the fascinating case of Phil Schneider.
Hello listeners and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly listen about the mysteries of the skies. This week we're going to be looking at the mysterious life and death of Phil Schneider. I'm one of your hosts, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other host, Stu Jackson. And fantastic introduction as ever, Neil.
Thank you.
And particularly ironic that you say we're looking at the skies because Phil Schneider is famous for his underground.
Finding things underground that came from the skies.
Yeah. So, absolutely. So Phil Schneider, interesting character. Before we get into any of that, though, there are some people out there, hopefully listening to this right now, and not right now as we're recording. That would be creepy because we pre-record these.
but listening to us as they're listening to it.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm.
If you're listening to this is aimed at you.
I need sleep. I really, really do. So the first person want to say a big hi to is one of our very regular listeners, Ed.
Hi, Ed.
So, hello, Ed. Ed has been sending lots of messages about the content and how much he's enjoying it. So, thank you for that.
That will always get you a mention.
But in particular, what I want to mention, Ed, about is he's given us a slight correction to. It was an episode a couple of weeks ago, on the Aetherius Society. That episode, we mentioned the Heaven's Gate cult.
Yes.
And we mentioned that they were trying to hitch a ride on Halley's Comet, and has corrected it. It was actually Halley-Bop. Not Halley's Comet.
Hale-Bop, yeah.
Hale-Bop.
The Hale-Bop Comet, yeah.
It was Halley-Bop.
He's right, yeah. Sorry?
I thought it was Halley-Bop. Is it Halley-Bop
it
or
might be,
Hale-Bop?
because I suppose we talk about Bill Haley and the comets, and so it became Haley's Comet rather than Halley's Comet.
Do you know what, though,
Hale-Bop. And you know, actually, I'm probably
let us know.
showing my ignorance here, Ed. I think I probably thought it was just another name for the same thing.
I'd heard Halley-Bop as a different comet, but there are similarities between them, definitely. But as Ed very rightly put, and Ed, perhaps you can tell us how it's supposed to be pronounced, whether it's Halley-Bop or Hale-Bop. But at least we got the bop part right.
Well, we assume we have.
Ed very rightly says that Halley's Comet's actually not due back until July 2061.
Right, well, I'll make a note in my diary for that one.
Yeah, because of course seeing Halley's Comet, and I remember Halley's Comet, that is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, isn't it? I suppose some people might just experience it twice, but whether it's memorable is another... I suppose at either end of the spectrum for him. Because it's every 75 years, I'm saying really hesitantly.
Yeah, I mean, we live in a country that's overcast a lot of the time, heavy cloud, and so we'll be told about some kind of phenomena in the sky that, you know, Jupiter is closer than ever, or you know, the moon will be, and you go outside and all you can see is cloud.
Yeah. You look up and you get a wet face. That's the UK for you. Now, got some other people really want to say hello to. Another one is someone who's only just started listening to our podcast very recently, which is Joan. Joan's been absolutely lovely since hearing about the podcast. She's been sending me quite regular emails about stuff that she's finding in the press about UFO events. So that's really very much appreciated. So thanks, Joan. Keep that up. Also want to mention, I've got a few mentions here today. So let's go with it. Agenda. Ben Stevenson. Now, Ben got in touch. Ben is the founder, or one of the people from Central Utah Paranormal. Ben also does the Lost Souls podcast, so give that a good listen.
Okay,
yeah. Wherever you listen to your podcasts. Ben's really interesting character. He, like I say, he runs Central Utah Paranormal, which is a paranormal investigation company. They go out to haunted properties and do like the EMF readings and electronic voice phenomenon and things like that. I mean, the closest I get to that, I suppose, would be the UFO thing, but also I play Phasmophobia as a game, which is absolutely terrifying. But no, he kind of does it for it in real life. I think dowsing is another big one. And
as a living.
Does it? Yeah, but does it professionally? Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, so really great to have you as a listener, Ben, and glad you're enjoying the podcast. Yeah, I mean, there's probably some crossover, really, isn't there, between UFOs and...
I think UFOs and extraterrestrials tend to get lumped in with the paranormal or the supernatural.
They do. But here's the thing: if you're contacting spirits from the afterlife, what's to say they aren't necessarily alien spirits?
Well, if you're talking about interdimensional beings rather than interplanetary beings, or if you want to get into the whole quantum physics kind of argument, where, you know, for every choice you've made, the other choice has been made in another. There's an infinite number of dimensions in which you've made all different choices. And that actually time is about moving through dimensions. So in another dimension, you're still back at school. Another, you know, and life never ends. Which is a nice thing to think. You know, that you know, when you experience your death in this dimension or whatever dimension you've reached by that time, that maybe, you know, you just pick it up in another dimension.
I don't know.
Somewhere else.
I don't know as I like that idea.
But there's also the idea that that the reality that we know, what we consider to be, for instance, solid objects, actually aren't. That if you look at the structure of an atom, the only matter in an atom is the nucleus, which is proportionate to the size of the whole atom. It's according to Bill Bryson in his book about life, the universe, everything. It's the amount of matter. It's like a fly in a cathedral, that kind of proportion. So most of what we perceive as solid objects or reality around us is energy, and the idea that it's vibrating at a certain frequency. That if you change the frequency, like changing channels on a radio station, you're in a different reality.
Yes,
and that's how beings move from one to the other.
Because I'm quite famously a big Trekkie person, and that's looked at occasionally, like, with things being sort of shifted out of phase and what have you, and phased cloaking devices, and it's. I mean, that's quite a deep well.
It's taking a scientific approach, but you could say. I mean, I don't know if Ben's going to agree with this. That maybe, you know, when you think you've seen a ghost or whatever, it is actually just like on the radio, you get interference from another AM radio, you get interference from another station, you just briefly pick up something else that's not supposed to be there.
Could well be. Let us know your thoughts on that, Ben. And one last person I want to give a shout out to is someone who's been listening for a little while now but got in touch with us, Ty. So thank you for listening. Ty has mentioned also how much he's enjoying the podcast. But here's the big thing. Ty also enjoys our other podcast that we do. Of course, Tales from the 20 Side. Now, Ty made a particular comment, and it's one of the reasons. I want to give a shout out and say hello anyway. But Ty has said that, of course, he found. Now, I can't remember if he found Aliens Explored because of 20 Side or Tales from the 20 Side because of Aliens Explored. But he found one because of the other. And he said we don't mention Tales from the 20 Side often enough on here. And that he feels that a lot of listeners would really enjoy Tales from the 20 Side, so we should give it a good plug. So I'm going to do that now. So talesfromthe20side.com. That's 20 in letters, not numbers. That's the other podcast. I mean, I'll let you, actually, because you're newer to that genre, I'll let you explain what Tales from the 20 Side is, Neil.
Well, it's I'm going
throwing you in it a
bit. Dom, our games master. It is a game. It's a Pathfinder 2nd edition Let's Play role play game. It's a sort of Dungeons and Dragons. Sorry, yeah, you're nodding. Oh, that's good.
I'm nodding.
I wasn't sure I had made a faux pas there.
No.
A kind of game involving 5 of us at the last count. And we're working our way through the Pathfinder 2nd edition adventure. What have we done so far? Is it about 1 out of 6 books or something?
1 out of 6 books for the adventure path Reign of Winter. That's the specific adventure path that we're on. Yeah, so I mean, for any listeners familiar with role-playing games or actual play podcasts and things like that, of course, Neil, you are very new to that genre, aren't you?
I am, yeah. Yeah, it's the first time I've ever done it. Never played a role-play game before. Or not that kind of role-play game, anyway.
We do have a lot of fun with that. So check it out if you like your fantasy, if you like your role-playing games. Definitely head on over to talesfromthe20side.com. I think I even put a link in the descriptions for these, so you can find that there. And of course, do share with us your thoughts, and you can get in touch with us like Ed has, like Joan has, like Ben has, and like Ty has. You can get in touch with us through Twitter, through Facebook, and through the website aliensexplored.com, or by just searching Aliens Explored on your social medias. Now, we've waffled on an awful lot already today.
Well, no, I think this is stuff that had to be said. You know, these are people we want to reach, we want to talk to, and we really appreciate it. It's certainly not time wasted, I don't think.
Oh no, absolutely. But people have tuned into this episode to listen to us talk about Phil Schneider.
Yes.
Now, this was one of those rare occasions where actually it's you switched me onto it.
Yeah, it's just I use Amazon Prime. I watch movies on. I'm totally hooked into Amazon for better or for worse. You know, I read my books on a Kindle. I have all my music on Amazon Music because I can shuffle between 10,000 songs, all the albums I ever had, ever wanted, ever thought I might want to listen to. They're all just there in my playlist, and I just shuffle them. And of course, movies. And I came across this one called The Underground. It's called The Underground: Director's Cut. It's available on Amazon Prime, free to watch. And yes, it's about Phil Schneider, who he's one of these. He's a credible scientist who made some quite startling revelations, and then died mysteriously.
Yes. Now, wait. When you first mentioned this to me, and it's worth very quickly mentioning. We talk about Amazon Prime. That's here in the UK. It comes free when you subscribe, or currently that's the situation at the time of recording. Not sure about the US and other countries. But check it out. Check it out. The Underground, it's called, as a documentary. Well worth watching.
And so
I found it fascinating. When you first mentioned it to me, though, I thought, how have I not heard about this guy? How am I unaware of it? Because it sounded like a really big event, and it was a really big event. Then on watching the documentary, I realised, actually, I had heard the stories and tales from his lecture. I just hadn't connected with the name.
Right.
So in ufology terms, I think he's got a bit of, I don't want to say celebrity status, but certainly he's well known, I think, in ufology terms. But it was really interesting watching the documentary and going into the detail that they did. Yeah. But as someone sort of new to it all, was it quite a revelation to you then?
It really was, and I had so many questions about it. So he was involved with building a secret underground base in, is it pronounced Dulce?
Dulce.
Dulce.
I think Dulce because that's how it's said
Dulce
in Latin.
Vita, yeah. Dulce, New Mexico, and for the military. So this base deep underground. Is it near area 50, 51?
Well, it's in New Mexico, so it's not going to be that far, but near to us in the UK. Near means maybe 10, 15 miles away. In America, it can be hundreds of miles away, and that's near. So it's a different concept to us.
Absolutely, given that it's a big enough area that they can test nuclear weapons. New Mexico or Nevada,
Just to jump on something you just said about saying he was building an underground base. I know he was involved in a tunnelling operation that seemed to encroach on an existing underground base.
Yes.
Basically, they drilled into this underground, according to his claims.
According to his testimony, and whilst being lowered down into it, he encountered these greys, the ET form that we're all used to seeing now, and had a gunfight with them.
Yes.
They zapped him with something that a colleague was coming down, who I think was a Marine, who returned fire and got him out of there.
Just to expand a little bit on the events as I've understood it. They were drilling down. The drill kept breaking repeatedly, which is kind of unheard of for these drills. So they had to send a physical person down. Why they couldn't send a camera down, I don't know.
When was this? This was.
This would have been in 1985, I believe.
So yeah.
Sorry, in August of 1979.
They still would have had cameras capable of being lowered, wouldn't they?
Yes.
In 1979, so just checking that.
Yes, but he has said that they needed to send actual people down. So he went down in this cage with, as you absolutely rightly say, a Marine. He goes down there suddenly in this, and he said that in particular the smell. They're basically, these creatures smelled like raw sewage. He gets his gun out and shoots one. It mentions it being Walther PPK that he had as a sidearm.
Just like James Bond.
Yeah. What was the Marine doing? Because he even said, he was wearing this heavy duty, almost like a spacesuit that you have to wear to go down this depth, which, fair enough. So it's quite bulky, so he's sort of struggling to get the clip in. What's the Marine doing at that point? That's what I'm wondering.
Was the shaft big enough for them to both go down together, or was the Marine somewhere behind him?
But they were in a cage, being lowered
in the same cage.
Yes.
The Marine wasn't following him down.
Yeah, because the Marine basically rescued him and sort of dragged him back and got the cage to be lifted up again.
Okay, I'm not too sure about the sequence of events. My understanding was that he'd gone down there on his own, and it just happened by chance that the Marine was following him down and bailed him out after he'd been
okay. I might
something.
have misunderstood that then, but definitely mentioned being lowered in a cage.
But here's a more sort of pertinent question. Imagine you're digging a hole, you're digging an underground bunker in the desert, and something keeps going wrong. You can't work out what it is. So they're saying, well, we need to send an engineer down to just have a look and see what's down there, what's causing this. And then they say to him, oh, by the way, you'll need to take a gun with you. You'll need a sidearm. I think, what? Yeah, and you'll need this Marine to go with you as well, and who'll also be armed. So, wait a minute, I'm going to look at a geological feature. Why I mean, we're British.
Yes.
I'm not saying that.
Don't
Probably
like
we are British. No, and we're Europeans. We're Europeans, and we're not used to having guns. So Americans just. I mean, we know that Americans have. They love their guns, or they have a gun culture. Not all Americans, of course.
Some
Americans. Apparently, most Americans don't own a gun. That although
well, that's good to hear, because I'm going there
although
next
there
year.
are more guns than there are head of population, it's large numbers of guns concentrated in small numbers of head. Apparently,
Right, in compounds.
In compounds, yeah, or cellars or hidden rooms. But yeah, so would do people just and if you're working on a military project, even if you're a civilian, that you would be routinely armed?
Yeah, I kind of took that on faith that yes, because it's a military contract, because it's a military job. Yes, he would have a sidearm.
But my experience in the British Army was that, soldiers working on a project soldiers aren't routinely armed. They're not routinely walking around with loaded weapons with live ammunition in them. But I guess in the US,
on
that's
the
far
project.
more. Sorry?
I suppose it depends on the project. Ultimately, it's about likelihood of encountering enemies.
They must have thought there was a fair likelihood of. I mean, another question: when the astronauts went into space on the Apollo missions or on shuttle missions, are they armed as well?
Now, I don't believe so, because for one thing, the chemicals in gunpowder that would have been pretty devastating. I mean, you fire a gun in a pressurized space capsule.
Yeah,
that's insta kill for everyone.
But if you're okay, we're going to walk on the moon. Just in case there's something there that's hostile, you better take a gun with you.
I have never heard anything about any space missions having armed weapons. Star Wars as one.
Yeah, well, I know they're doing 50s B movies as well. They'll always have a.
When I say Star Wars, I meant the project, not the movie.
Right. Yeah. So if you're working on a military space station or something, I imagine you would have some kind of weaponry, some way of defending yourself.
Officially, there aren't any military space stations, though, are there? There are military satellites, but no,
not officially,
because you've got the ISS is the only real space station that I'm aware of, and NASA, of course, is not a military organisation.
No, but no, it just struck me as funny that someone being sent down a hole in the middle of the United States to look at what's causing the drills to break would have been given a gun, and
he did mention about, and it was kind of almost a throwaway remark, or at least it seemed to be in the documentary, that he's working on this dig, and then suddenly like 40 Marines turn up as part of the project, and I think he said, like that's when there's something serious going on.
Yeah, something. But if you're on a military site, you'd be used to seeing soldiers or Marines.
Yeah, but if you're out in the middle of nowhere just doing drilling for the military, You might have like some military officers, but then all of a sudden an additional 40 Marines are posted to your location in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, again, I probably wouldn't have been too concerned if I was on a military project. The army or the Marines, they do all sorts of things.
Yeah, if they're there from the start, but if you're halfway through the project and suddenly for no apparent reason there's suddenly an extra 40 Marines. We're not talking squaddies, we're talking Marines.
Yeah.
Which, as I understand it, they're sort of highly trained.
They're
a bit
are,
like
yeah.
our SAS.
I think they're a bit like our Marines. It's just, they are highly trained infantrymen. The Marines will always say they're better than the Army. The Army will always say they're better than the Marines. That's just the esprit de corps. Marines are trained in... the US Marines are very different from the Royal Marines. The Royal Marines is just part of the Navy. And traditionally, they would be soldiers who would be on board a ship. They do in the old sort of days of galleons when ships would hove to and prepare boarding parties. Well, that would be your Marines. They would do that fighting. That was their job. Or you need to land somewhere and you need to send people ashore and it's possibly hostile territory. That's what your Marines are for. And then later, you're actually using them for invasions and things. That's what they're trained up to do. Whereas the US Marine Corps is pretty much an armed services in itself. It might even be bigger than the entire British armed services. They have their own ships. They have their navy. They have their own air force. So the US Marine Army Air Corps, or the US Marine Air Corps. So they have it, and as well as their infantry. So they land, sea, and air.
Okay. Well, I'm conscious time's getting on a bit on this subject. So we've talked about kind of the project he was doing and the event he had. Now, the big thing about Phil Schneider wasn't, obviously it was that experience, but it's the fact he then went basically round on lecture tours.
Which is what the underground film is, isn't it?
Talking about it, yeah. Partly that and partly, I talked a lot about his father. There's so much to unpack about Phil Schneider. It's unbelievable. Not unbelievable. Well, to many people it would be unbelievable, but that's not quite what I meant. It's shocking how much there is to unpack about him. But particularly, I want us to talk about the fact he went on this public tour schedule, and then he died under some very questionable circumstances. Now, it's not unheard of for governments to basically to knock people off and then pass it off as suicide. And it seems like that's what's happened here, because he was found face down in his wheelchair with his catheter tube tied tightly around his neck that asphyxiated him. And yet it's just passed off very quickly as, it's suicide.
How did he end up in the wheelchair?
I'm not 100% sure about the nature of his medical condition. Certainly his experiences down in that tunnel, he said that basically this beam of light opened him up like a fish. So I can only imagine that he must have had ongoing issues from...
That's what I was wondering, if he'd actually been crippled when he was wounded in that gunfight. Because he obviously wasn't wheelchair bound when they sent him down. Sent down a paraplegic. But also, I also noted when I was preparing for today's little chat that there's very little on the web about him, and there are even comments in Wikipedia and such like saying, "Where is all the stuff about Phil Schneider? It all seems to have been taken down."
That's a highly question. But then if you get into that kind of that conspiracy, well, they're just removing all information. How is there a documentary about him?
Yeah, someone filmed his lecture tour, and that Yeah, why would you get rid of the guy and get rid of all the references to him online, but then leave this movie on?
There's
on
loads
Amazon.
of his lectures on YouTube.
Yeah.
That you can find. So, yeah, it doesn't look like someone's done a kind of a cleansing of the internet of him. It's hard to say. I mean, the Wikipedia thing, because a lot of it is contentious and it's a lot of things that he's claimed. Some people would say that he's not provided evidence, although that's up for debate. So I can see why Wikipedia might just say, look, people are saying this is fact. It might not be fact, so let's just not have it. Because they do, occasionally. But it's a really... It's a curious case. It's a very curious case. Let's. So I'm going to say to all the listeners out there, if you have access to finding this documentary, watch it. Let us know what you think about it, and maybe, you know, if we hear from enough people, I think this is a topic we can revisit at some point. And I think I'd like to revisit it at some point, because there's a lot to go into. In the meantime, let's do our summaries then. So it was you who switched me on. You watched the documentary and you said this would be a great topic for our podcast, which it is, absolutely. Watching the documentary, did you take everything on faith that what he's saying is accurate, or that it's true?
No, I don't think I did. I didn't know quite what to make of it. This guy who'd been in a firefight down in deep beneath the bowels of the earth, where actually, you know, digging their underground bunker, and actually came across an extraterrestrial alien bunker that was already there.
It sounds fantastic, doesn't it?
That's the thing. It sounds fantastic. But the guy has a lot of credibility. He's an engineer. He's
a geologist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, but this when we talk about, and I hesitate to use this to firefight, because by his own story, what happened was he went down, saw these beings, it terrified him, and he happened to have a gun on him, so he shot one of them, killed it, again by his own, and they've then reacted to that. They've then defended themselves, and he was hauled up out of there. That's what he said in as part of this lecture in this documentary. That I wouldn't call that a firefight. I would call that an
exchange,
unfortunate incident,
an exchange. It shows, if nothing else, our weapons are deadlier than theirs.
Not necessarily, because how do we know that the reaction, the physical reaction, was at full power?
We don't.
That would be speculation. And there's so much speculation. That's all you can do. But it was definitely a reaction. He got in for, and if he's had time to fumble with getting this gun out with his gloved hand and then getting a clip in, and he said he was struggling to do it because he's had lots of time. So they've not just seen him and gone, "Oh look, intruder, zap." I mean, he was the aggressor.
Yeah.
In that encounter, very much.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So what? Yeah, Mike. And I also have a question. What's happening about the bunker now? Do they just decide, okay, well, there's something down there that's hostile. Well, we've made it hostile. Maybe we should go and put our bunker somewhere else. Is that what's happened to it, or they blocked up the hole, or they've made a rapprochement with the aliens, or whatever it is down there?
Who's to say? I mean, certainly he never mentioned going back there at all. And of course, it's all in a very secure area. Yeah. It's a good question.
Yeah.
And what were they drilling for? And if the government knew that they were down there, which has been speculated, why were they trying to drill into it?
Yeah, and why would they send a geologist down first?
Yeah.
Unless they thought, well, actually, we need to get a bit further before we can send the Marines in.
Yes, it raises a huge amount of questions. Now, I'm willing to accept a lot of what he says on faith, but that's the thing. I'll accept it on faith with a huge but.
Yes, I have questions.
Yeah, but there's more we need to know. Was he bumped off by the government because he knew too much? Absolutely, I'm convinced of that. I remain utterly convinced of that. There is just so much to the story that with so many missing pieces to the story, though, it's really hard to gauge what actually happened and what was happening. Yeah. But what do you think, listeners? As I say, go and watch this movie and do let us know. Like I said at the beginning, let us know by the usual methods. You can contact us through Facebook and through Twitter by searching Aliens Explored. Or you can get in touch through aliensexplored.com. Now, next week, Neil... Now, surely you're a movie fan.
I am a big movie fan, and I have to say though, I've only seen this movie once when it first came out. I know.
Oh, Neil.
I'm coming clean.
Okay, but it's a movie that I think many of us have seen many times.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the famous Steven Spielberg movie. But we'll be asking the question, was it actually based on real events? Don't miss that one. Stuff. That's it. So, until then, keep watching where you're drilling and the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.